Hello everybody, I'm Matthew, the Garden Center Manager at Earthworks, and today we're going to talk about planting vegetables, specifically here in the fall in Northeast Florida. Over here to my left, I have an example of some greens that we planted a few months ago by seed, and you can see now that they're all probably about a foot to 16 inches tall. We have kale, we have Swiss chard primarily, there's a little bit of spinach mixed in. But this is a greens bed, and this is a really good example of what is being grown right now, November, here in Jacksonville, Florida. But it all starts with really good soil. So the basics of veggie gardening here in Northeast Florida is not just to plant things in the ground, because our sandy soil really is pretty poor and not the ideal situation for growing fruits and vegetables. So we use raised boxes. 8 to 12 inches is ideal, 12 would be perfect, but 8 to 12 is sufficient. You build a simple veggie box. These ones are 3 by 6, or you can do something like a 4 by 8, or if you have more space, you can do something even bigger. But a 4 by 8 or 3 by 6 is perfect because you can work around the edges of the garden bed without getting into the bed. Anything larger than a 4-foot wide bed makes it difficult to work the entirety of the bed without getting into it. So by getting into the bed, you'd be then compressing the soil, which makes for less than ideal soil conditions and compaction. So, good soil. What is good soil? Well, compost is our model for good soil. And here in Northeast Florida, and at Earthworks specifically, we do sell a wild earth mix, which is a nice, dark, rich, lightweight compost mix that's perfect for starting vegetables in. And this is exactly what these are growing in. Now, I did amend the beds. After I put the soil in, I did amend the beds with biotone. So you've probably heard me talk about it before. If you've watched any of our other videos, you know the DIY chicks, they use the biotone. Pretty much most of our plantings at Earthworks, we use the biotone. And there's a very good reason for it. Not only is it a plant food, but it also has living microorganisms and mycorrhizae in there. Probably wondering, what are microorganisms? What is mycorrhizae? Well, they are living organisms that have a relationship with the root system of plants, and they make the roots grow exponentially faster. They also give the roots a larger surface area so that the plants can absorb nutrients and water more easily. All right, everybody, so all of your vegetable plants start with a seed. These are mustard seeds. But most of your winter vegetables, your kales, your collards, your cauliflowers, your broccolis, your Brussels sprouts, they're all in the same family. Mustards, they all have very, very small seeds. And the biggest pitfall that people fall into is they plant their seeds too deeply. So whether you're starting them in small 4-inch containers or directly sowing them into the soil, most people have trouble getting them at the right depth. So the easiest way for me to explain it to you is that once your garden bed is prepared, you put your soil amendments in, whether that's compost, whether that is with the biotone. Sometimes people use black cow, different types of manures. But once you have that all mixed in, what I like to do right before I plant is just lightly pat down the soil. So what I do is I take my hands in the soil and I just gently pat the soil down. Now, if you've watched some of my other series, like the Barefoot Bonsai, you notice that I use this for different types of plantings with cuttings as well. But by lightly patting down the soil, you compress the soil just enough so that way when the first time you water it or the first time it rains, you don't have the soil compressing as much, and you're not going to have the seeds sinking deeper into the soil. So by pressing down lightly and then gently making little dimples in the soil, so not holes. You're not sticking your finger in, you're not making a hole up to your knuckle or all the way up to the top here. You're just making a little dimple. So for these small little seeds, you want them just barely below the surface. Once you have your seeds in place, spaced out properly according to the seed package, which will tell you how far to space them, then you gently just dust them with soil so that they're just barely underneath the surface. So these are the first vegetables that we planted a few months ago, and we're going to show you some shots of the other vegetables that we planted afterwards. So one of the keys to keeping your vegetables growing throughout the year is a term called succession planting. So for example, let's say you buy 2 or 3 packets of carrot seeds and you plant all of them at once. You could potentially have like 1,000 carrots all ready all at the same time. Now, unless you're feeding literally an army or maybe a high school football team or something like that, you're not going to be able to eat all those carrots at once. So what you do is you plant some one day, In a few weeks you plant some more. A few weeks and then you plant some more. And throughout the season, as long as it's within the window of time that it's appropriate to plant those seeds. So you space out the planting so you have a staggered harvest. That's called succession planting. Now when you're looking at these greens here, when you go to the grocery store, you see the whole head of greens. They just literally cut the plant and then package it and send it to the grocery store. But the best part about growing your own food is that you don't have to kill the whole plant to make your harvest. You literally start at the bottom of the plant, the lowest leaf, and you pick off a leaf. And you do that with each of the plants. You could take one leaf off of each and have a giant salad for your family. So you don't have to cut the whole plant down. Now here's the best part. Just by picking off 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 leaves, I usually don't take more than 1/3 of each of the plants. By taking this small amount, the plant then still has enough energy to continually grow throughout the season more leaves. So you have a very long, extended harvest for all your vegetable greens. All right, so here's one of my favorite things about growing food in Northeast Florida. Number one, we can grow food all year round. We have distinct seasons, and I'm going to talk about that in a few moments. But the coolest part is November 20th, and I have tomato plants growing at the same time I have my winter vegetables growing. And so long as we don't have a heavy frost, or so long as I can protect these tomato plants when it gets cold, I can still get them to maturity and to harvest before it's too late in the winter season. So I planted these several months ago. I have flowers, I have tomatoes all over them. This particular variety is a really, really neat cherry tomato called Midnight Stack. If you look very closely here, they're black. They're technically like a really dark purple, and then they do ripen to red with a purple cap on the top. So once these start blushing red, I'll know that they're ready. But super cool, they start black and then ripen to like this red and black color. Super delicious. Cherry tomatoes are they are the easiest tomatoes to grow here in Northeast Florida because we have such narrow windows for optimum temperatures to grow them. And a lot of other places in the country, further north, they're grown throughout the summer. Here in Northeast Florida, we plant them 2 different times. We begin them by seed in February, so that way we can get them to maturity before the summer heat comes on, because tomatoes do not like excessive heats. In the high 80s and into the 90s, they kind of just hit the pause button. They stop growing. The flowers don't develop into tomatoes. And if there are tomatoes on the vine, sometimes they don't even ripen. So we're trying to get our harvest before the heat of summer. The second time that we plant tomatoes is coming out of August. We plant them by seed mid-August or so, trying to get them to maturity before it gets too cold. So now we're in November 20. They're obviously at maturity. I have tomatoes ripening, and I'm hoping here within the next week or two, so long as the temperatures stay mild, I'll have a nice harvest of tomatoes. All right, so I found another little critter here in the garden as I was preparing for this video for you all. This is a very hungry caterpillar. I have not identified him yet. I have seen him before, but I have never looked him up, but it's a moth. This is a caterpillar that loves to eat my greens, and I like to eat my greens too, and I really don't want to share. Although if I left this one caterpillar on the tomato plant that I found it on, it probably would not have done enough damage to keep the tomatoes and the flowers and all those things from happening that I want. However, I don't want this to get out of control. So there are some organic solutions that I'm going to tell you about. Super easy to use, safe for your family, safe for pets, safe for the environment, and they can be found at Earthworks. We carry them all year round for all of your gardening, not only vegetable gardening, but also for your ornamentals and your flowers and different types of plants that some of the caterpillars like to eat. So I'm going to talk to you about that. All right. Okay. So the first product I want to tell you about is called BT, and BT is short for Bacillus thuringiensis. So in organic gardening, sometimes we use germ warfare to get rid of caterpillars and other types of insects that like to eat our vegetables or ornamentals. So BT is easy to use, and this right here, it's already pre-mixed. You just squirt it on the plant, and within 24 hours, the pests, in particular caterpillars for this product, will no longer be a threat in the garden. Another thing that we use in the garden is a product I don't have with me right now. It's called Spinosad, and the brand name is called Captain Jack's Dead Bug Brew. Spinosad is another type of bacterium that attacks an even larger range of insects and will help keep your garden thriving and pest-free throughout the season. So the BT caterpillars only, and the spinosad has a larger range of insects. Still safe for bees and our beneficial pollinators, but will get rid of the pests in under 24 hours. Now, in addition to insects here in Northeast Florida, and trust me, we have a lot of insects, we also have another problem, and that's fungus. Because of all the rainfall, the moisture and humidity, fungus is growing here almost year-round. So there is a safe, organic alternative that gets rid of fungus in the garden and also in the lawn. We use the organic copper fungicide. So copper is a natural antifungal. This is a concentrate, and we dilute this with water. It's usually about 2 to 3 ounces per gallon, highly concentrated, and you put it into a pump sprayer or a squirt bottle, apply it to the affected plants, and it will clear them up. Now, it will keep the fungus from growing, but will not remove any of the blemishes. So if you do have blemishes on your plants, it doesn't hurt to go ahead and cut those off, either before or after you spray. But by cutting them off, it helps you know if the fungus is coming back. Sometimes when you have a plant with a lot of leaves that are affected by fungus, it might be hard to tell if the plant is getting better or if it's worsening. But by cutting them off, at least you're starting at ground zero again, and then if the fungus breaks out another time, you'll be able to see it much easier in the garden. So the last thing that I'm going to talk about is fertilization. So I showed you the biotome. That's what we mix into the soil. So we're feeding the soil as well. We're putting all those beneficial microbes, the beneficial mycorrhizae, and the slow release plant food in the biotome at the beginning, right before we plant. Now throughout the season, because it is a race going into winter, a race against the cold, and in the spring coming out of winter, a race against the heat, we want our plants to get to maturity as quickly as possible. So I use the organic fish emulsion made by Neptune. This is a great plant fertilizer that gives your plants pretty much everything they need. So in combination with the biotone, and then using this as a liquid supplement once a week is ideal, your plants are going to grow like crazy. You're going to have much larger harvests. You're going to have less likelihood of your plants getting sick and attacked by disease, and they're going to be more robust, and harvests are going to be amazing. So once a week for this, in the beginning of each season with the biotone, and that is your feeding schedule. It's not difficult, but I'm telling you, if you have never used a liquid fertilizer on your vegetable garden, the results are going to be staggering. Really, really good stuff. Thanks everybody for joining us one more time and learning a little bit about vegetables. You can come into Earthworks. We're open 7 days a week. We carry seeds, we carry all of our organic garden solutions, and you can ask for me by name. Just ask for Matthew. I'd be more than happy to help you get your vegetable garden started this year. Until next time.